so glad that you're here. My name is Jennifer Dale. I'm Vice President Recruiting for Gray Television. And I'm so excited to have Nicole and Adam Karras here with us tonight. Nicole works on the recruiting team with me. She is one of our recruiters, and Adam is our news director at our station in Cedar Rapids. And yes, they have the same last name. They are not brother and sister.
One of them changed it.
They are married, and it's really kind of interesting because and they'll have an interesting perspective of college perspective from college to career, because they kind of work their way up through the business together. Adam, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what it's like to be the news director at KCRG, what a typical day is like for our young people that will just be entering the workforce and, looking to get a job from somebody like you.
Sure. Honestly, I think the best part is there is no day. That every day is going to be a little bit unique because it depends on the stories and the content. And that's what I still really like about being involved in the news business, really, that it just keeps evolving and keeps changing. And so you keep learning and having to talk to new people and get to, things every day. And so for me, typical day is really being involved in newscast day to day. The story meetings every single day, and I'm really involved working with the reporters and developing their stories, research as they're stacking newscasts. We try to be as hands-off as possible and really empower reporters and producers to make their newscasts and their shows their own, and their stories their own. But like I said, each day is just a little bit different. So I get to be involved in different ways and different avenues throughout the day. So.
And you hire a lot of young people
Yes.
in Cedar Rapids. What positions are you hiring people in as first-time employees at KCRG?
So we have a really strong group of reporters who have been there for a couple of years. We have a couple of people who this is the station or third station in some cases, but we do have several reporters here in the next couple of weeks who are right out of college. So really, I think it depends on the position, but mostly reporters, producers we're hiring right out of college. Have hired one weekend anchor reporter right out of college, but mostly in those reporter producer positions are the ones that are right out of college.
Okay. Well, and I will say that kind of lines up too with most of the open positions we have right now. Nicole, you deal with that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What positions are you currently trying the most to fill in your stations?
So I would say producing is the outstanding need, and producing both in the traditional sense. So a news producer who we think of when crafting and putting together a newscast, but also digital content producers. These are positions that there's not nearly as many of them in our newsrooms, but there is a need. And I see a lot of stations doing more with digital. And so sometimes some of these positions will pop up and I have questions about what's this position? This is new. And that's exciting, right? Especially for people who are leaving college and are very digitally savvy, much more than those of us who entered the workforce 20 something years ago. That, you're really going to bring to the table an innovative way of thinking about how to reach consumers where they are, right? And that's what digital is about. That's something that Gray is very big on, is really leaning into that digital space. And so whether you have, traditional news skills or have, digital skills, we can find a place for you really anywhere you want to go. Adam knows, you both came up as producers. These are always in demand positions. And right now, I would say that is the greatest need, not only in my region, but probably company-wide. We do also have needs for, entry-level MMJs. So whether you're looking to be in front of camera, behind camera, we can find a space for you.
All right. So I think one of the biggest things that the struggles that I see going in for someone going in is just transitioning from that college newscast to a commercial newscast. A lot of the schools we visit, I was just I just got back today from Northwestern, which is a wonderful journalism school and one of my favorite places to visit. And they have those students are exceptionally well trained. And they do a newscast a week or so. I know Nicole, you and Adam both went to Mizzou, which owns an NBC affiliate. So you guys are dealing with a place where there's a lot of like it's an NBC affiliate, so it runs like a regular television station.
Kind of.
Yeah, kind of. This like the students work along the professionals, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
In my school we did 3 newscasts a day. So I mean, I think the 3 of us probably got a bit of a head start in those roles. But most places, really that pace is what we see. But I mean, because right now, a student isn't. You guys know, like you're busy, right? You're going to classes. You have a part-time job. If you have that on campus television station, you're covering news on campus, and then and then you also you have your extracurricular activities. So you're pretty busy as you go through. But everything's about to change, and you're going to have just one focus, being a journalist. And I remember that was probably one of the things that kind of struck me is I'm like, wait, you mean I get like 2 days off a week? Because I was going to school, I was working at my part-time job, I was working every weekend back home, plus working at the student newscast. And I'm like, wow, I get like 2 whole days off a week. Like, this is great. But what goes along with that? It's overwhelming. I always tell people that like that first 6 months of that new job, they're going to be doubting their life's choices. What do you?
I hope not.
Oh, was that?
I said, I hope not.
Oh, I did. Oh, I think it's completely normal. What have I gotten myself into?
Oh, sure.
At least that's how I felt the first 6 months of every new job I've had, including this one. After 6 months, I feel like you get a little bit, you develop some calluses. But what do you feel like that you see students asking about, or what do you think is the biggest surprise, Adam, when a student comes into KCRG versus what they did in college?
I think you kind of touched on it with the pacing and the fact that you're turning a story every single day. Most colleges, even KOMU with Mizzou or Arizona State or Northwestern, or a lot of that do have kind of regular newscasts that are built to try and simulate a real world as much as possible. It's different when you're doing it 1 or 2 days a week to you are there doing it 5 days a week, and turning those stories and trying to find story ideas every time and trying to get in contact with sources and make sure you're turning a story, but also planning ahead to the next day. I think the biggest adjustment I see for reporters, especially coming out of college, is that I have this reporting thing I do 1 day a week in between all my classes to doing every single day and really becomes my primary focus. So I think that's the biggest adjustment when you think of from a professional standpoint. The other piece that I see a lot is the work-life balance aspect. In college, it is really the social life is handed to you, right? You're in extracurricular clubs. You meet a bunch of different people in classes. Maybe you're friends with some engineering students or some med students or some art students that aren't journalists. I think a challenge for a lot of people is they're now in a new community in a city that maybe they've never lived in before. And it's challenging to make those connections with people outside and to really get to know your community. I've seen a lot of journalists over the years struggle with the work, and they do the reporting and they talk to people in the newsroom. Maybe they go out for a drink or something with some folks in the newsroom. They go back to their apartment and that's it. And so they create this little bubble of their own talking to their people in the newsroom, and they're not getting out and making friends and connecting with the community, and understanding is important to their community and getting to explore their community. So that's something I really try to challenge younger reporters to do, is to get involved with a church or a charity or a nonprofit or something outside of the newsroom. Make friends who are not in the newsroom. It helps broaden perspective. It develops a connection that's going to pay off with story ideas with people who moms or no parents, because so many of you are coming out of college. you don't have kids in the school, so you don't think it's really important from a school district standpoint, or you don't own a house, so the property taxes might not make sense to you. You make those friends in other circles that are in different aspects of life or different walks of life for you, that a personal stress relief, but it becomes a resource in your professional life as well.
That really paid off for me. You know, part of the reason that I had such a long career at KCRG was because of my community involvement. You know, you have to think beyond your involvement at the station and not to add things to your plate, because we just took a bunch of things off of it, right? Your part-time job, your extracurriculars, you're studying late at night. But you want to feel like you're still well-rounded and have a perspective that lives outside of the building that you are in every day. And for me, you know, early on in my career, in my first job, you know, I was living by myself in a place where I knew no one, which that can be an overwhelming experience, to feel like now you've got to start over, so to speak. It's a lot easier the more you put yourself out there. And I volunteered at the Humane Society. It's also led to me adopting 2 dogs. So just keep that in mind. that can come with a price also, but I don't regret my choices. But that did lead to a lot of great story ideas for me, whether it was something that was about the Humane Society or some of the struggles they were seeing, or awful stories about dog abuse and things that, you know, viewers tend to really want to hear about if they unfortunately do happen. But, you know, you're making connections with people who are then connected to other things. And so you can see how you can kind of start to build this web that can lead to story generation, which is probably one of the most difficult things about starting a fresh job, whether you're coming out of college or even going to a new station, is establishing those sources to find those story ideas. And community involvement can really help with that.
Really quick, as we go through this slide, I know we have a lot of college students on here who'll be looking for their first jobs or in the process of it. What I'd love for you guys to drop in the chat is how long you have to turn your package for, or your news, or put together a newscast in college. And then we're going to compare that to what you're going to be seeing whenever you get, when you get to that, when you get there. But I mean, the challenge is going to be going from one live newscast a day to having, I mean, I think, you know, I was recently news director in Charleston at our station here, and I think we did 8.5 hours of news a day. You know, so, I mean, you'll go from having one deadline to having a whole bunch of deadlines. And then the sheer pace of running, you know, of covering news in real time, because nobody wants to wait. You know, I see Carly says she spends a week working on a package. Hey, Adam, how long does a reporter at KCRG have to do a package?
Like the length of the package?
No, I mean, how long do they have to turn it?
Oh, I mean, they turn it that day. So 8 hours
About 6
total.
hours, yeah.
Probably less than that, really, by the time you take out the morning meeting to get the assignment, and if it airs at 5 or 6. So you're talking probably 5-6 hours total to turn it.
And then you got to do it again tomorrow. So we actually did a story pitching clinic. It's streaming on our YouTube channel, Gray TV Recruiters. And you can go back, and it's completely aimed at helping you do those packages every, like having a different story pitch every day. Oh, well, here you are. We first element on this slide is many college students cover features. If you don't take anything out of that, is that if you can possibly like figure out how to do hard news, the more hard news you can do in college, the better off you're going to be when you move into a real job, a real commercial television station, because that's what you're going to be doing. And then,
and,
go ahead.
And Jen, I had a great one there from a former assignment manager I worked with. And I think it really holds true. He said the difference between a good feature and a good lead story is the anchor intro. It's just in the way you set up that. Is it dealing with an issue? Is it an issue that's affecting a large group of people? Can you frame around that? Even if it's a really at the heart of a story, a character feature and a story about a really fun, interesting group, the anchor intro can make a huge difference in that. So that's something to kind of focus on when you're starting your stories. You pitch it too.
I could definitely tell that is a Karos comment, because Nicole and I have discussed many a time on something we saw and to be like, I don't like this story. And she'll be like, I bet I can make it where you'd like it. All about the angle.
That sounds about right.
There is an art to doing that. One of the things I did is also a challenge is your story development. A lot of young people don't know how local government works. If you want to go ahead and start teaching yourself, learn city council. That was one of the things we actually did yesterday with a young man that I was meeting with at Northwestern. I'm so excited for him. I don't know if he's on here or not, but he's doing an internship this summer and he's going to be reporting. So we were going through agendas and going through agenda packets to help him find stories once he gets to Wisconsin. He's not interning with us. It's very sad, but I know he's going to do great. So it was kind of fun to go through and talk about that. But, start looking at and learning about how state and local government works, because a lot of people really, are learning civics in their first job. And then let's also talk about the reality of the fact that you're going to see some really tough things. That's, and Nicole, like you were a reporter and an anchor for a long time. Mm-hmm. How did you deal with that?
The worst thing you can do is to bottle how you're feeling about it and not talk about it. And, I think especially early on, you can feel embarrassed if you have feelings about a story you covered, because you'll think that you're the only one who feels that way, or that you're weak for feeling that way. And that is absolutely not the case. We have the unfortunate job sometimes of talking to someone on the worst day of their lives. And you have to look at it in some ways, oddly, as almost an outlet for someone to grieve. For example, I covered the 35W bridge collapse in Minneapolis, and I was a young reporter, and I was not in the Minneapolis market, but I worked in the Austin Rochester market just to the south. And so my station sent me up there to cover it. And so already I felt, I didn't feel like I was qualified to cover such a big story, but I wanted to do a really good job. And I was just thinking about the mechanics of the story, not the emotion of the story. And we were in some downtime between newscasts, and a man came up to me and he said, "Have you seen my wife?" And he was just white as a sheet. And he said, "My wife is on the bridge and she's not answering her phone." Come to find out that he had lost his wife in this bridge collapse, which was awful. And that story has stayed with me for years. And there are some things that will just hit you differently. And you need to give yourself the grace to process that, and to realize that even though we're journalists, we're not robots. We are human beings who have feelings, and having that vulnerability. There's something beautiful about that to the viewer, because it reminds them that you are one of them. You want to talk with people, not at them. And especially in these tough stories, having that human element and allowing yourself to have feelings within reason. Let's not manufacture feelings. But if you're genuinely feeling a certain way, embrace that to a certain extent and don't shy from it. Talk to your news manager about it. Talk to your colleagues about it. Call your mom on the way home. Reach out to somebody you trust and just say, "I had a really tough day today and here's what I'm feeling," because just even that release can really be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're going to see hard things. I was wondering the other day, I'm like, well, it's not that different from a first responder. And how does a nurse process this? How does an ER doctor process this? How does a police officer process this? I mean, it's a lot of the same thing. And what you do is a really important job. I think I know I did. I got into this and I thought, well, this is a cool job. I'm going to play with video. I'm going to write. I'm going to put things on television. But in reality, you're giving information that can save lives. I didn't truly appreciate that until I was on the Gulf Coast during Katrina. I didn't fully appreciate that until then, when people were depending on me for information. So, I mean, really think about what you're doing. And this job is fun and interesting and cool. It's also really hard and really important. So just know going in, with that. All right. So we've talked a lot about what the problems you're going to have to see. So let's talk about some solutions. And I'm going to start by playing a video because I think the biggest thing that you can do if you are taking this in as a sophomore or a junior in college is do an internship. So I'm going to put up what it's like to work, to do an internship with us.
It definitely wasn't what I expected it would be. I thought I would probably just be, sitting and watching people do all the work.
I have never done anything like this before, actually pitching stories, going out and getting B-roll myself, making the interviews, doing the contacts, and then editing the packages.
I was actually put into doing the work of a reporter. I had to come up with my own pitches and follow through on those stories, make my own contacts.
I'm able to use some of the materials I made here for my reel.
With the help of several people who work here, I learned how to make my stories look so much better than I knew how to do before I came here.
My grade mentor told me that internship is your longest job interview. And I say, if you want to know what it's like to actually work in that profession, then do that job at Gray.
So that was two of our interns from this summer or last summer in WRDW in Augusta. And Jada, she's actually going to be working full time at our station there as an MMJ. And then Emma is, she was younger. So she is actually one of our Gray Fellows this year. And she is doing a fellowship with our station in Birmingham. So, I mean, complete at least one internship. If you don't complete the internship, does that mean that you're not going to get a job? Does it mean you're not going to make it? No, it really doesn't. But that internship does give you a leg up. I know, Adam, didn't you guys, I mean, you've hired a couple, I mean, of your interns into full-time positions, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we didn't have any this semester. Actually got a job in another Gray station. She's going to be fabulous there. But over the year, absolutely, we've hired, in fact, our weekend evening anchor right now is a former intern. Our morning show anchor, former intern. So those internships really do pay off. Even if it's not directly at that station, it makes connections. This is such a small business that if you do really good work at one station, will put in good words for you, or they go to another station, they remember you as an intern, being a hard worker, really having a lot of potential, being smart. So those internships really pay off in so many different ways.
And what I would say too, so I never had an internship, and there's a big reason for that. It's because I couldn't afford to not be paid. Because internships didn't used to be paid positions. You were paid with your experience. And that was great if you were able to do that. But instead, I worked for cable access channel. I worked in production at my local NBC affiliate where I was living, just to get the experience. But I also needed the money to live, right? What's great about our internship program, you know, most internships, Grays are, and most should be paid, are paid opportunities. So, you know, we want you to be able to not have to think about, you know, just being paid with experience. We're going to give you some money. And because we give you some money to do that, we're going to really give you an immersive experience. And that's something that I wish was available to me 20-something years ago.
Yeah, I mean, so I did intern and I didn't get paid. And I went home and worked at the grocery store at night. I went to college. I went to college. I interned and I worked at night, and it was rough. You know, one of the, you know, we do pay our interns $15 an hour, 25 to 29 hours per week. We hired 450 interns last year. We have 10,000 employees. So, I mean, we're a really big company. But our internships are super competitive. So apply and then apply again. You know, we try to keep a running list of places that still have internship openings, but I'll be real. If you're applying for an internship opening now for the summer, it's going to be hard. I mean, we've probably got 10 or 15 nationwide. You know, but the internships for fall will start to post. So, and they're on a rolling deadline. We open and close our internship positions just like we do jobs. So just keep an eye on, you know, grayishiring.com. There's a button up there for internships, and we post them. So apply for them early and apply often. Because I mean, I would guess we get thousands of internship applications, and we hire, what do you think, Nicole? Maybe 5%, 3%. So, I mean, it's just hard. It's not impossible, but the more you do and the more that you're active and the more persistent you are, it pays off.
And there are ways to also, I always admire students who, if they're not selected for internships, kind of create their own opportunities. And there are certainly ways to do that, to continue to figure out ways to get reps, even if it's not necessarily within the walls of a TV station. In addition to being an intern, so maybe it's not the best example, but I want to share it anyway. The gal that was interning for us, who got the other position at another Gray station, created her own newscast, her own lifestyle type newscast at her college, and went through the whole process of booking a room, making sure she had production staff, bringing on guests. There was a lot of legwork there. But that paid off, and that's what ultimately helped her really get that first job.
And one of the things that was on the other slide I really want to mention is that, I see a lot of students who, when I was news director, would apply for a job with me in Charleston, and they would have interned at CNN, or they interned at NBC, or they interned at a nonprofit, or, along those lines. And then they're like, well, I want to be an MMJ. Well, I mean, why would you intern there when it's not the job that you want? If you want to get ahead, do your internship at a local television station if you're going to get employed there. If you want to go work at a network, by all means, do your internship at a network. But if you're not, you're just going to have to, it's just going to be a little bit harder. We hear a lot about burnout. I can't name a young reporter or producer in Gray who completed an internship at a local television station and then didn't complete their contract. This is the key, people. It took me like 2 years to figure out the common denominator, because I couldn't figure out, because it wasn't schools. We had students from big name, fancy journalism universities that weren't weren't able to complete it. And we had students who were from universities that I'd never heard of that were burning out. I'm like, what's the difference here? And it truly is the internship. It's a game changer. So there's that. So prepare yourself. What can you do outside of the internship? If you can't get an internship, or you can't have that, then what can you do to help yourself? Work on a deadline before you have to do it. Don't take a week to do a package. If you're going to have one day to do it, do that package in a day. Communicate with recent hires doing the job you want. So call up an MMJ, ask what, at a local television station, ask what they found hard, ask what they wish they would have done, job shadow between internships, and, attend these webinars. I mean, I can tell you, I kind of look to see who registers, and if somebody's willing to give up their Thursday night to be here and to chat about the job that they want, that's kind of somebody I want in the company. I look at that. And those of you that have been here multiple times, we see you. We know who you are. And, it doesn't mean that we're going to be able to help you get that job, in your dream market, but, we'll do everything we can. So let's talk about some of the common mistakes. Okay, Nicole, I know you've got feelings about, we'll use one of the students on here who asked about going to get a digital job in Charlotte as their first job. I mean, I just want to say it's a bad idea. I say that, and then I'm like, hey, Nicole, pick this up and talk about it.
Yeah.
How do you feel about markets and where people should start?
So here's the thing. I started in small market TV, and I would not trade that experience for anything, because we will all make mistakes in our first job. I still make mistakes now. I don't like to talk about them, but I still make mistakes now because, again, I'm human. But, especially going to your first station, you're not only figuring out yourself, but you're figuring out how this new world really works, because it is so very different from anything you've ever been through before. Our smaller stations, and smaller stations in general, are just really well equipped to be able to be supportive for you and a safety net, so to speak, and give you that grace to make the mistakes that you're going to make. Now, should you walk into a newsroom and make mistakes intentionally to see what's going to happen? No, that's something probably my 9-year-old would do and does on the daily. But just, be aware of the fact that smaller stations are going to have a certain level of training in place that larger stations just aren't equipped to do, even though there are more people. Think about it this way. A station like Charlotte, right? Beautiful station, great legacy station, these kinds of things. The bar for success and the bar for everything really is way up here. And not to say that all of our stations don't have a high bar for success, but the standard is so incredibly high that if you walk in and feel like you are trying to get up to speed to the people who have set the bar up here, you're going to constantly feel like you're failing, even if you're not. And that's what can lead to that burnout, because you feel like you're doing everything in your power to turn out the right content, to be a strong journalist in the newsroom, but you're always going to have that bar that is way up here that no one could achieve coming straight out of college, nor should you aim for that, because you will burn out. So I have a lot of love for small markets because I've worked with a lot of people who have made that made that leap. Like I worked with a gal who started at our Topeka station, went to our Charleston, West Virginia station, and within the last couple of months just signed at KMOV in St. Louis. And she feels prepared and ready to walk into that newsroom with a certain level of confidence that is appropriate for her experience level, where she's just gonna do amazing things. And she's so grateful that she took the slow and steady approach.
I mean, think of it like training for a marathon. If you just start running as fast as you can, you're not like, I couldn't walk out of my house today and run a marathon. I would collapse. You have to train for it. And generally, I think that's what it's like in a larger market. If I would not have been a news director before I became news director in Charleston, I don't think I would have been successful. It just moved too fast. There were too many moving parts. I needed to go to the smaller market where I was a news director first to prepare myself. And I'm so thankful that I did. Same thing right out of college. My first job was in tiny Dothan, Alabama, and I left there and my next job was producing 110 markets larger. I wouldn't have been ready. That 1 year is almost, someone described it as grad school one time for me. Think of it as grad school. Get your, spend your time, your year and a half. Because if you sign a 2-year contract in a small market in Gray, you can transfer after a year and a half. So there's that. It's just good. It's better for you. Intern in the industry, don't intern in an industry you're not going to work in. We talked about smarting in a salt station, and learn to do the job before you have to do it. That's probably the biggest thing. I run into so many people who think reporting is one thing, and then they get there and they're like, well, this isn't glamorous. No, it's really not. There's nothing glamorous about carrying the equipment through the sun and, through 112 degrees in Charleston, South Carolina to cover a story. But it's not glamorous, but neither is being a nurse. Neither is being a doctor. But you know what it does do? It matters. It really matters. So this is the last slide. We're going to start getting into some of these questions, but we do this every month. I know we had some questions earlier about getting that sports job. That's going to be next month's topic, because we have thousands upon thousands of people who want the dozen sport jobs we have. So you got to do something differently if you're determined to have it. You can find links to the internship applications on grayandhiring.com, and you can sign up for alerts about our student journalism programs. So that means whenever we start accepting applications for fellowships, if you're signed up for that email D list, you'll have a link to apply. And with us, a fellowship is an internship, and we give you some housing allowance so you can go to wherever. We see it as the great equalizer, but those are hugely competitive as well, because we only take 10 nationwide. So let's answer some questions here. And I think I'm probably the only one who can see them and put them on.
Adam has been furiously typing to answer.
Yeah,
I'm trying.
What? Adam, you need to come back and help us answer questions in the chat from this point forward. So I'm going to start at the bottom and try to work my way way up. Here's one. I saw sign-on bonus and moving. I mean,
Yeah.
the answer to that is it depends. It depends on the job. It depends on the station. It depends on the location. It depends on your skill.
I always tell people it doesn't hurt to ask. What's the worst they say? No, and then you're in the exact same position now. So
yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask, but I mean, like for example, in our station that's fully staffed and you're looking for, I mean, no, if you have like one position and 112 applicants, you're probably not. But so you can always ask. It doesn't hurt, but it is also isn't a given.
The other one I saw, there was a thing back and forth about station visits, and whether or not you should expect a station to bring you in. I think, when I was coming out, I was told that was a red flag. Times have really changed on that. Like if a station wouldn't bring you in, COVID in particular really made it reasonable to do virtual visits, to let you meet face to face with the other producers or managers that you'd be working with. And from a budgetary standpoint, stations are trying as much as they can to save those resources for when they're really needed.
Well,
so
I mean,
go ahead.
I would say, yeah, I mean, true. Before COVID, I'd never hired someone without flying them in for a visit. But now for some of the entry level positions, you don't. And there's a couple of reasons, especially now the world's changing. Let's just be real. When we built out this recruiting team, we had far, far, far more openings than we do now.
Yeah.
I would probably say we had 2 or 3 times as many new openings as we do now. So we could not fly everybody in we offered a job to. It would have cost us at least $10,000 a month. But now you don't. And now we do have the ability to do things like this. You can do a FaceTime tour. And also you see a big push toward regional hiring. I know that that's a big change here. Whereas I used to, whenever I was news director in Charles, like here, I would hire across the nation and bring them in. Now, honestly, I try to look for people who have ties to my community because it means I'm going to keep them long. So,
and that also makes it much more reasonable too. It's one, if I can drive somebody in, that's a pretty cheap, pretty inexpensive, pretty low lift way to bring somebody in, let them see the station. And that's something you can do if you're within you just happen to be driving through. I've had that happen before where I've been talking to a candidate and they say, "Hey, I'm driving through. You mind if I stop in?" Absolutely. Why not? But that's a big difference than flying somebody in, especially if it's airports, especially different markets. Smaller markets might not have a lot of cheap flights. You might be talking $1 airplane ticket plus a hotel, and depending on the schedule, maybe it's 2 hotel nights. I mean, those costs quickly. I think the bigger thing to look for, as opposed to, are they going to bring me in and let me see the station? Transparency and openness from that station.
Yep. And I mean,
are they letting you talk to other coworkers? Are they going to show you around? Are they answering every single question you have, giving you every opportunity to really explore? Are they giving information? Are they guiding you to where you can find information about the community? That's the thing I would look for more so than, are they going to get a ticket in a hotel?
Yeah. I mean, so during COVID, we actually refined the way that we hired when we couldn't bring people in. It went from a conversation with me to maybe someone else to bringing somebody in to, okay, a conversation with me and the assistant news director. Then let's bring in another manager to have that conversation. And then at least one, if it was MMJ or a producer, whoever we were hiring, another person who did that job. That's another big tip is see what you need to, just call that person. You don't have to know them. I mean, and I'll be honest, if you're looking for a reporter or producer job and you're not comfortable calling someone that you don't know, you're not going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you've got to be, call up another person who has that job similar to you want. They'll tell you about the culture of the place. Let's see, here's an interesting, and what good steps to take after you apply for a reporting job to put your best foot forward for the position?
Great question.
Yeah.
All right, Adam, why don't you talk about what you look for in an application?
So I look at it in 2 levels. In an application, I'm looking for your experience and your work samples. Where have you been? Is it just college experience, or have you worked at an internship like we talked about earlier? Do you have other previous jobs? What have you done on the side? Maybe clubs, activities. So I'm looking for your experience. The other thing I'm looking for work samples. So whether you're a producer, reporter, photographer, get some samples, include that in your application. I know our process in Gray, you can include links. Most places, I'm shocked, have a spot where you can include links. And even if they don't, put links in your resume. So have a website for yourself, whether it's a page or I forget the name of the program's escaping me now, but your own personal, you can have some work examples from you. Have that in your application, because that's the thing that's going to get your foot in. Then when we get to the interview process, that's when I'm starting to look for your personality traits, your those kind of X factors, those intangibles, and if it's going to be a good fit for our station in particular. But those work experience, however you can make those stand out on your application, is the best.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's another question. How different are on-air positions from MMJ on-air reporters positions? Do meteorologists generally turn as many packages as reporters? Not as many packages, but especially when you get into smaller markets, there's going to be a lot of times that you are going to have to report. Is that something you guys do in Cedar Rapids? I know we did it very rarely here in Charleston, but I have worked in places where it was an MMJ/reporter job.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that in smaller markets where, again, your resources are limited. So people have multiple hats. We've had our meteorologists turn stories. They've usually been weather-centric stories. So we try and keep them in their wheelhouse. We've tried a lot of times to do weather extras, is what we call them, where the meteorologist is that report to expand on a weather issue, whether it's a drought or a flood or storms, things like that. So we try to keep it, at least in our market and our team, we're able to keep the reporting for me limited. But again, I think if you're looking for your first step into the industry, you've got to be willing to kind of, you're not going to maybe love your first job. That's not going to be your dream job. It's stepping stones, right? So if it's a small market, maybe it's a place you don't want to live and retire. Fine. It's a place that you can gain experience and you can gain skills and learn things while you're there. Get you to that place that you want to live and spend the rest of your life.
Well, I live down the street from the Spam Museum, so I wouldn't say that I wasn't living a dream there. I will say
not on burning blood that smelled.
But I will say when I do come across a reel, and especially a student will have, and even an early professional will have a package, a weather-related package, whether that's talking about, the job of the weather service, sending out survey teams. Again, it's in that weather wheelhouse, right? If I see these types of packages on reels, that always is a plus to me. Is this something you absolutely have to have? No, but realize that when you walk in as a Met in a station, that you're going to be leaned upon to be an expert in your field. And that sometimes can mean turning content that kind of speaks to that expertise that does take the form of a traditional reporter package.
Here's a great question. How can people with print and digital reporting experience best make the jump to producing?
Apply.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing.
Those skill sets cross over so well.
Yeah, I mean, so I love to hire print and digital reporting people for digital content producers, assignment editors. I loved, my assistant news director was a newspaper editor. He'd never worked in television before I hired him. So, I mean, just if you can write, journalism is journalism. You're going to just need to start in a smaller market. Those are things that, yes, you're not going to, if you've never produced a newscast, you're not going to get that first producing job in Charlotte.
Yeah, but I think that you were talking about those skills cross over so well. I mean, produce about understanding the material, the subject matter, and being able to write well about it. So if you're coming from a print background or a digital background, odds are you're already a very, very strong writer and you've experience in dealing with journalism and news materials. So those are going to cross over really well.
Before we move on from that, I do want to point out that this kind of speaks to another question I saw a little bit earlier is, a lot of positions for producers are asking for a reel. So perhaps you do come from this digital or print space and you don't have a reel to include, first of all, don't feel like that takes you out of the running for an on-air or producing job for broadcast. But, my advice to that would be including your writing samples that you have. If you're a digital producer and you've got like a website that you've worked on that has some of your work in there, I know Adam has a writing analysis that he likes to send out to people. We have one on the recruiting team as well that can kind of gauge your broadcast writing style. So don't feel like it's great to have a reel if you've got it. But again, if you're making that transition from maybe a digital or print space into the broadcast world, don't feel like we're going to rule you out because you don't have it.
This was a question that I thought was an interesting one. How common are regular performance evaluations? Do they need to be requested or maybe annual? Not necessarily would I like to address the evaluations, but probably more so feedback, because that's what you're going to want more than an annual review, because you don't want your information about once a year. How do you do that, Adam?
It's really every single package for reporter is getting a script review. We do rundown meetings single day that I'm involved with, that the anchors are involved in. I mean, that's all feedback. Is we're talking about better here, this would be better there. We'll do it individually, one-on-one. Especially, I really try to avoid any negative feedback in a group session. It might be more general. Hey, what do you think of this? Let's move of in the moment in those rundown meetings. But if someone does a story that's like, wow, that's the mark, I'm going to pull them aside separately. So it's in the moment. So I'm not waiting. Jennifer, you're not waiting a year to say, boy, that story 6 months ago was really rough, and so you're not surprised that your mark of, oh, I didn't know that my video was not great or my interview skill was great. We're talking about those stories on a daily, constant basis. So to me, initially, that feedback needs to be instant, daily, and every single day, every single story, every single.
And
that's much stronger than those yearly ones.
The feedback and the feedback isn't always going to come just from someone with a news director title. Like, let's just be real. There's 45, 50 employees, one news director, and 8.5 hours of news a day. So, I mean, that's why we have management teams. That's why we have anchors who have been long time in the market. That's what we want to, the feedback doesn't have to come from the news director always, because it's just humanly impossible. This is, Ricky said he has on-camera experience, but only have an associate's degree, but not bachelor's degree. I haven't had any luck being hired. I would guess in that case, like, an associate's degree isn't going to stop you from getting the job. My guess would be take a look at your reel. If you don't have, if what you're doing isn't working, think about what you need to do in order to be marketable. Do you have a traditional reel? Does it look like what news directors are looking for? Adam, talk to me about what you look for in an MMJ reel.
In an MMJ reel, so I start off really first just look at how and listening to how the person is delivering the news. Is it full? Is it clear? Is it concise? Are they comfortable on camera? Really just awkward and not really, comfortable, nervous. It's one of those things you just kind of look at, okay, am I comfortable listening to this person, or is it a distraction, the way they're delivering the news or their mannerisms or what have you? So that's the first thing I look for. So really with one of the big things is to focus on having that montage at the beginning and making it things that are really powerful, and make sure it's clean, it's effective. Then I'm looking for creativity in that same montage. Are you doing this every single time? If I'm standing with my microphone, every single thing, maybe I'm in the same spot in the studio, or I'm out in the field, but I'm doing the exact same thing every single time. Okay, there's not a lot of creativity there. So, they're still learning that creativity. So that's going to tell me a little bit what they are in your profession. So the more you can put in some variety of live, and hey, let me look and talk and show you this stuff, and I'm doing a stand-up this way, and stand-ups where you have cuts in between and are really showing me something and being active in your stand-ups. That's a really creative person. You're really advanced in your storytelling. So that's going to tell me a little bit farther about where you are. So montage is really important. That sets the tone for, okay, I can understand where this person is. Then I'm looking at the first story, maybe the second story, to see, are you telling me a feature story, or are you tackling news stories? And when you tell those stories, are you finding a human being, or is it all official sound? So again, all these little things tell me a little bit about where you are in your development, what you're like as a journalist, what your the style and brand is and whether or not it's going to be a good fit there. So make sure that's really reflective of everything you're on, your creativity and your storytelling and the depths of your journalism that you're able to tell.
And if you want to see, like we did a whole session, hour-long session on what a reel should look like and what news directors are looking for. You can find it on the Gray Recruiters YouTube page. So, that's from the people who'll be hiring you. And because I hear a lot of students, well, I'm not like I had a guy tell me one time, he's like, I'm not a cookie cutter person. My reel isn't going to look like everyone else's. Okay, but you're competing about, like, you're the people who are telling you what they're looking for to hire. Like, if you not giving them what they're looking for, then like that's an issue.
Well, and that's where that creativity is really important. Like I said, I've seen a bunch of reels for college kids coming right out because, again, they're in the beginning of their careers. They're just learning. They haven't really got the creative bugs going yet in a lot of cases, where it's just them standing up on a microphone. As much as you can make that montage, find something really creative, really doing in your stand-up. Why are you on camera? I'm going to grab this and show it to you. Look how this let me walk around and show you the space. I mean, the more creative you are in that, the more it's going to stick out for that news director.
And think of too, like, everything you should do should have a reason.
Yes.
If you're just on camera to show yourself that you can talk on camera, you're doing it wrong. If you are using a sports reel to apply and using play-by-play to apply for news jobs, and you think that's going to get you a job as a news reporter, you're probably not.
I've got a really good story on that, Jennifer, that you just reminded me of for our sports reporter, who I love. He is fabulous. And we just talked about how difficult it is to get those sports reporting jobs. So he emailed me when he was a senior in college, which I highly recommend. It never hurts to send to a news director and say, hey, can I get feedback? Never hurts. You start making those connections as a junior, senior. When you graduate, it's going to pay off for you. But he emailed me, and it was exactly what you just described. It was the traditional sports tape of, here I am giving highlights. Here I am interviewing a player after a game. Here I am giving highlights again at the sports desk. And I'll admit I was having a moment. I was not overly rude. I did ask him about this afterwards, but I sent him a very honest feedback and said, dude, this is that you're applying for a sports job in the 1980s and 90s that doesn't exist anymore. You need to show me that you can tell sports. You need to do sports stories that appeal to women and moms and people who aren't sports fans, still going to be interested in those stories and those players and those people. And so I sent him that tape. He sent me a new tape maybe about a month later that had stories in it. It was a story about the PA announcer at a basketball game. Who the heck notices a PA announcer at a basketball game? It was a really fascinating story. I'm like, okay, that told me not only can he tell a story, but he's extremely coachable. So if I give him feedback, take that and run with it. Hired him as a news reporter. A sports reporter came opening. I knew he's a awesome guy who's going to learn and grow fast. Moved him into that, and great. He's grown so much now. And you look at his tape now compared to where it was when he came out of college, it is night and day. She's grown.
Yeah, I mean, and if chances are, if you want to do sports, you're going to have to do something else first.
Yeah,
unless you're really,
be ready.
Really, really good and really, really lucky. Because it's going to take both of them.
Yeah, I love that you said lucky, Jennifer, because there's a lot of really good sports reporters and anchors out there who just doesn't line up, just not the right time, not the right place, not the right fit. I mean, sports jobs, I've Nicole this many times, I liken sports jobs to becoming a famous Hollywood actor. There are a lot of doctors out there, and to really make it, you're going to have to go do community theater. You maybe have to wait tables, get your script in front of somebody. You're going to have to do a commercial for this, or you're going to have to do the background of this to try and get there. And maybe you get your break. Doesn't mean you're not a bad actor, or a good actor, that you're a bad actor, but it's a combination of, there's a lot of people competing. You've got to be ready to do work. And it's still, at the end of the day, some luck has to play into it too, to really, as a career long-term, as a sports person.
Here's an interesting question I wanted to say. They're asking which markets are looking for a digital content creator. I get this a lot. I want to be a digital content producer. I want to make TikTok videos. We do those things. That's not anyone's job in our company just to do that. The digital content we're looking for people to create is journalism. It's stories. The stuff that I'll get a reel from someone. Sometimes it'll be them I don't know, showing me putting on their makeup or whatever. Those aren't things that we look for on our sites. Our market research shows that people come to us for journalism, for news stories. So think about that, about what sort of content you create and what the stations are looking for. Adam, what does a digital content producer do at KCRG?
So they're really managing our digital products. That's the best I can put it. They're a combination of they're finding content on their own through digital sources, the social media channels, whether it's looking at our competitors and saying, oh, that's a good one. Make sure we have that. Make sure we have everything on our site. So they're doing a little bit of that. They're also with the assignment desk to make sure as news comes in, whether it's a news release or a court hearing or breaking news, that they've got that information. They've got photos available. They're working with reporters in the field to gather photos, videos, and upload them to the website, and make sure our reporters really spend more time focused on their TV story, that they're making sure that that story looks really good on the TV platform. Content creators are the ones who are really thinking digital first and making sure that same content, that same information looks good on digital platforms, on social media, on our websites, on our apps, and things like that.
Let's talk real quick, because we've got 4 more minutes, about the Gray Talent Pool a bit. So the Gray Talent Pool is available at grayhiring.com, the same place you all registered for this. And what you need to do if you're interested in working for Gray is create your Gray Talent profile. You'll upload your resume, your reel. And if you don't have a reel, then it's going to be a big struggle for you to get a job as an MJ. It's a lot more competitive than it used to be. If you're applying for a producer job and you don't have a reel, I'll send you a writing exercise. I'll tell you straight up, maybe 1% of the people I send a writing exercise complete it. So, but that's what's going to be. But if you can write, I can help you. If I can't show that you can write, I can't help you. So, upload all the markets you're interested in working in. And remember what we talked about, start small. The people, because if you're looking for a job right out of school, or Charlotte and Atlanta or Phoenix, I don't know, I can't help you. So once fill out your profile, 3 to 5 months before you'll be looking for a job. If you already have a profile, you can update it. And then it gets pushed out to all of our news directors. We have hired more than 500 people out of the Gray Talent Pool this year. So it works. It's just, again, we want the best in the company, so it's competitive. Just think about what we're looking for, use the information we've shared with you, leverage that to create and make yourself the most competitive for these positions. All right. I think we have time for one more question. Let's see. Anyone see one that... This chat is popping tonight. This is probably the busiest chat that we have ever had. And it would be the one day I'm trying to do this and run the chat, because we're going. So if I missed anything, drop it out. What kind of experience is important for digital producing? You need to be you need to know AP style. You need to know how to write in a traditional print format. Do you have anything to add to that? That's my big thing. What about you, Adam?
Yeah, it's kind of a hodgepodge, because a lot of the stuff you can be doing, and a lot of stations will be able to train you on, again, depending on what market level you're looking at. But I think you hit some good ones. Writing is a big one. Having an understanding of visuals, what photos in Photoshop and how to get those going, and video editing, even just basics. You don't have to be an expert and user in either one of those, but at least knowledge of how to use them. Digital analytics and kind of what matters, knowing between a page view and a user, and those types of analytics, I think is really helpful. But at the end of the day, I usually am looking a lot at the journalism skills and make sure they have a good understanding of news backgrounds, news, and what is not. So.
Yeah, everything we do comes back for writing, guys. It's just, it is what it is. If you don't I'm always amazed when I go in. I'll be like, "So, do you love to write?" No, not really.
The other one I'll say for this, and I think this is a really good one for college kids as they're coming out. The news, read the news. I think that's one I see a lot. I wish I'd hit on this earlier, coming to it now. The number of college students, especially, who only get their news from Facebook. watching other channels. They're not watching other outlets. They're not reading other news. And that's such a way to start to make connections when you read a story and then something pops at work and you go, oh, I remember a story that gives me context that I can now take. And I have a great story idea that's going to be unique and going to be my own, and a way to advance that story. So be a super news consumer. Watch other news stations, watch your competitors, watch the station. You don't want to be that person who goes into this morning meeting and go, I think we should do a story about X. That was our lead at 10 last night. Don't be that person.
Oh, and I'll ask a reporter sometimes in an interview, or a producer, I'm like, so who's your favorite news reporter? And they'll be like,
yeah. Yep. And you learn so much from watching other people, reading other news outlets. You can kind of start to piece together how they got their story and go, okay, next time I'm going to use it on a similar story. So you can learn so much from watching and reading other news outlets, as well as now being an informed reporter, a more informed citizen. So,
and the person you're competing against probably is watching the news.
Another way to set yourself apart.
Yeah. And then last question, what if you live in a big market? Anyone want to take that one? If not, I can say what I'm thinking.
What if you live ready to move to a small market?
Yeah. I was like, move. I mean, because
there's opportunities.
You have to decide how much you want this. Let's just be real. If I tell people all the time, you have to love this or you're going to hate it.
Yeah. Big markets have level positions as well, but it's definitely not going to be, or more than likely not going to be, an on-air position, or again, what you want to be doing right away. So be ready to, hey, yeah, I'll be the secretary. I'll work at the front desk. Get your foot if you can in a big market. So there's opportunities there. I'll be a production assistant. I'll be a grip out at a live production. There's opportunities in big markets, but I think the better experience really is looking at a smaller market and go to a smaller market for 2 years, 3 years, and really learn the job that you want to. That experience. You get a lot more experience that way.
Market, like we have almost no production positions. You may look up and get a entry level associate producer position, but go to your small market, spend a couple of years, become good at it, and you can move up a lot faster. So
And here's the thing, it's an adventure, y'all. To borrow a phrase from my friend from the South, it's an adventure, y'all. And just and view it as that. You're gaining life experience here, and you're going to value it so much later in life. I know I sound like a parent when I say that, but you really will. And it'll really just make you well-rounded, not just as a journalist, but as a person, to just experience a different way of life in a place you've never been to. Again, can be very overwhelming, but it's just, you're going to grow so quickly in that first job. And as now in my role as a recruiter, that's something that's so beautiful to watch. Yeah.
And Ned makes a point in the chat. Every big market has small markets that are a couple hours away. So sometimes you don't have to move across. It doesn't have to move across the country, but you're going to get a lot more experience working in that smaller market than you are as an associate producer in a big market.
Yeah. And I get it. I understand having a family. You're talking to 3 people whose careers did not take the path they expected because of marriage. My husband moved with me all across the Southeast in the last 16 years. I took my first news director job when I had a 2-year-old little girl. It was hard, but he was willing to do that. Nicole, you guys both have a really interesting journey since you're married.
Yeah.
Yeah. We made professional sacrifices for each other. That was our personal journey and our personal choice. And did I want to live in Iowa, in the state I grew up in, as an adult? That wasn't my plan. But here I am, and it's worked out for the best for me. I had these visions of going to a really big market and making it there. And it gets to the point where you think about, when you're leaving a really good thing and a really good company and a really good job, what are you looking for? And when I couldn't answer that question, it just became very evident to me that I'm where I'm supposed to be.
And I grew up in New York. So my plan the entire time was, I'm going to get back to the East Coast, be close to family, all that other fun. Never, to Nicole's point, never imagined being in Iowa. But there's something kind of hinted this of being ready to go to a small market. I love Cedar Rapids. It has all the big city. The cost of living, though, compared to New York is night and day. My taxes are literally third of what my sister pays, and not in New York City, in upstate New York. So this is not even big city New York. So I mean, you're going to find a place that you love. Just don't, be open to that, the place you don't expect.
All right, so we are now 5 minutes past time. It's been great talking with you guys. If you have questions that didn't get answered, or you think that we can help you in some capacity, feel free to shoot us an email. Let me find it. There it is, recruiting@gray.tv. We'll be glad to do everything we can to help. Oh, look at there. I hear a little person that wants mom and dad.
I told her 8 o'clock, and here she is.
Yeah, we're going to call it a day. Shoot us an email if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you next month, where we'll be talking about how to get that, get your start in sports. Bye, everyone.